Hello everyone, I'm Kathi Powers, Superintendent of the Twinsburg City School District. Welcome to Twinsburg Schools Today. Well, we're into the fall months and so many things are going on in our school district. And as I thought about what kind of show we should have today, I remembered that we have 5 wonderful Board of Education members that our community knows from being at our board meetings, but you really haven't had a chance to meet them personally. And so today's show is all about our Board of Education members, talking with them, learning a little bit about what makes them tick and why being on a Board of Education is such an important job for them. So first I'd like to welcome to our set Mr. Rob Felber, our Board President.
Thank you, Kathy.
Good to see you today.
Good to see you.
And Mrs. Tina Davis, our Board of Education Vice President.
Thank you.
Well, I'm so excited that you're here. You know, in 8.5 years of the show, I have never had the Board of Education on our show. I guess I'm past due. What do you think?
I think we can try to knock it out of the park for you.
I think you will. You will. So being a Board of Education member, is that something that you would have aspired to do as your children grew up and gone through the school district?
You know, I don't think it was, I was sitting in kindergarten thinking this is what I want to do when I grow up. But it was something that, you know, it came up later in life as an opportunity, been involved in other civic endeavors, and it's certainly presented some interesting times, interesting challenges in the 6 years that I've been on the board.
What about you, Tina?
Well, having taught prior to being on the board, prior to family and kids, as my kids got into the Twinsburg schools, I felt it was important to be involved in the schools and the community and try to volunteer as much as I could or as much as the teachers would need me. And my husband's also, he's been teaching for 25 years now, so education and being involved in the education world has been a big part of our life. So I wanted to do more than just volunteer in the classroom, so I tossed it around for a couple of years and then decided to take the leap.
You know, I think that there is often some kind of misnomer about what a Board of Education does, and really you are the leadership of the school district, and the day-to-day operation, I guess, is something that I take care of, but the oversight of everything is a tremendous task. So can you share with our residents a little bit about some of the things that you engage in, things that you find important about your roles, and the things that are your responsibility as elected officials here in our community?
Sure. Well, obviously we have a fiduciary responsibility. You mentioned the administrative responsibilities that are under your tasks. I think probably the biggest misnomer is people think that we hire all these positions, when we really only hire 2. We hire the superintendent and we hire the treasurer. We hired obviously very degreed people that have been in education a lot longer than us. So I think that's one of the big misnomers. But the things that we get involved in, everything from the welfare of the students, the security, the curriculum, the list goes on and on that that crosses our desk. And I think that's something that people don't see on a day-to-day basis when they're concerned about one particular issue. They don't realize that we probably deal with hundreds of issues a month. And you need to have an open mind and be collaborative, because we're not one voice, just mine or just Ms. Davis. There's 5 of us, and it's really democracy in action.
Right. I think because your kids are so active in our community and your daughters were active when they were students, members of the community know you and you're so easy to contact and so easy to talk to. So if a parent or a community member had a concern or question about the school district, how should they go about contacting you?
Well, they should either try to get a hold of us by email. Some of them know our phone numbers. We're out and about in the community a lot, so we do have people who come up and engage, and sometimes at odd times when we're like at a school function for our child and then they want to kind of talk business, and we're there as a parent, but we're also, as being a board member, that we play many roles. But I think all of us are pretty open to anybody who wants to contact us and reach out to us by phone or mail, and we might not always get to it right away, being that there's so many things going on with the board in our own lives, but we try to answer back as quickly as we can. And if we don't know the answer to something, we try to seek the answer and find out more about the topic they're questioning us about, so that we can come up with an educated answer for them, or be able to answer them without just on the spot just taking a wild guess. That's not what we're about. We want to be educated about the topics we're talking about, so we'll seek other help from you or Marty or other people in administration if we need help to answer questions.
You know, one of the things I remembered, this was a couple years ago, and I think your children were actually even a little younger, and you were concerned about the pickup at Wilcox.
Yes.
And I was so happy that you brought that up, because we've made some significant changes there because you were interested in solving a problem. And I think that's what the Board of Education does. They recognize that there are concerns, questions that need some research into, and then we make some great decisions. And it's all about having the eyes and the ears out in the community and bringing that information forward so that good decisions can be made.
Sure. I mean,
Right.
you know, as Ms. Davis said, we are a conduit. We're a conduit not only as a resource to the administration and the rest of the employees, but also, you know, the other foot is in the camp of the district constituents. And as Ms. Davis said, you know, they come to us, don't necessarily expect an immediate answer. A lot of times the answer might be within themselves. And what we try to do is say, where's the problem? Listen to the problem. If the problem's with a teacher, have you discussed it with the teacher? And if you're not satisfied with that answer, perhaps take it to the principal, and then maybe up to your office. And then if it comes back to the board and it's a board level decision, that's really a chain of command that works very well, because there has to be responsibility both ways. It's not just something you call a board member and it magically gets fixed. It could be something that needs discussion, research, and I encourage people to use our school email to contact us if it's something that we need to research.
So every year the Board of Education establishes district goals, and we have 4 goals this year, and one of them talks about educating the whole child. And that's a movement that is in our state, in our nation. Can you just explain to our community members the importance of the education of the whole child and actually what that means?
Yeah, let me take this one first?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, whole child, it's kind of funny when you say the state is just now mandating and coming up. That was probably one of the first terms that I heard when we first got on the board was whole child, whole child. Twinsburg is all about that, knowing each child's story. So to us, at least for me, I've been hearing it for 6 years. What that means to me is not just the academic side of the child, but the social, emotional. One of the things that I am most proud of, one of the biggest decisions we made, me and Tina were, when we first got on the board, was Beachbrook and bringing the counselors. And I think about, we see reports on the number of referrals, and if a child is struggling at home or there's trouble in the family, and it's not the child, but you know, it impacts their learning. And I hear about these referrals and what we see, and I'm like, where were they getting this help before? And to get help in school during the day by the counselors that are in our school, there are extra counselors from Beachbrook, was probably one of the proudest things we did. It was a big decision. It was a lot of money. Probably at the time we thought maybe a gamble. And now we see the impact, and I think now the state is catching up. But Twinsburg's been, you know, almost a decade ahead with the whole child.
Right.
Right, and educationally, we also hired the academic coaches, which was, I think, a huge plus for our school and for our kids, and in reaching kids who were maybe just on the border of either if somebody didn't grab them at that moment, they may go down the wrong path. Kids who just need a little bit of encouragement, a little bit extra help, and I think that was a big plus for our students too. And so it's not only, it's also about reaching, and the best way to reach and teach our kids and find whatever works. And it's not just one teacher working with the child, it's teachers, it's maybe even a mentor teacher who they don't even have, who they trust. It's our advisors and counselors. It's everybody working together to reach our children.
And you know, Mrs. Davis, you mentioned the academic coaches. That was actually a board initiative that came out of one of our committees.
Came out of policy.
Yes.
Policy,
Yeah,
and
'cause
then
we were
also
talking about minimum grade point averages,
Right.
and then there was like, well, we need more data.
Yes.
Twinsburg's all about data. We
Right.
don't make a decision without the data.
Right.
We got the data and we said, wait a second, as Ms. Davis said, it's not athletes, it's not non-athletes. There's a lot of kids that maybe they're C's or so, and they're just getting by, and they're, you know, needed some attention. And that was interesting how that came from one discussion led to another, got some research. I think Louise did the research.
Mrs. Tringle, right,
Mrs.
yes.
Tringle was the
Right.
high school principal at the time, and the data said, you know, and then we went on, well, what do we do? You go to all these other schools, well, we have coaching tables, and really it's all they were doing was making them study, and they really weren't. So not only did the program have success, but it was also featured later at the Ohio School Board Association conference down in Columbus, I remember.
Right.
Making that presentation, and really seeing the impact of that program. So that was
And starting to be duplicated in other schools now.
Yeah.
I think so. I think it's amazing and it's a wonderful thing that our Board of Education really takes the lead when we have a problem. That was an academic piece. Working with the Chamber, we have the Academy at Twinsburg High School. This Board of Education is very interested in being proactive and innovative in their approach to keeping kids focused and in the center of all your decisions.
But I think the staff does a great job of bringing things to us. The blended learning, for example,
Yes.
was completely staff initiated. They came to you. You said this is kind of interesting, and then they did a demo, for the entire board and actually put us through blended learning. And now the kids love it, and it's becoming a blossoming program.
It is.
And there's so many initiatives that have that we've been a part of, but not the biggest part. The biggest part comes from sometimes the teachers and the administrators and behind the scenes. And so when I hear something sometimes in meetings that, the board's initiative with this, a little bit of guilt, because I'm thinking, well, there's a lot of other people who worked hard on this who aren't always getting the credit, and we really appreciate all the teachers and the staff and what they've done for our kids.
Absolutely. It's where the rubber hits the road, is in
Yes.
those classrooms, for sure.
Sure.
So as we close out our segment, can you just mention one thing that you're particularly proud of in your time on the Board of Education?
As I was trying to think of one specific initiative or idea or program, there's just so many that we could be talking about. But for me, I guess just the biggest thing that I'm proud of is that I'm here to represent the community and just always put the kids first, and that's where my heart is with the schools and the kids. And so to just name one is a little tough for me, but I'm just glad that the community trusted me and has entrusted me to do the best for their children.
That's great. Absolutely. What about you, Rob?
I was thinking it'd be programs, and you're right, we could go through all the different programs. At the end of the day, the board makes some very difficult decisions, and we have some very intense discussions. But at the end of the day, we're 5 people. We vote. We make our voices heard and represent our constituents as best as possible. But at the end of the day, whatever that decision is, whether it's a 3-2, 4-1, whatever the vote actually happens to be, we agree it's democratically. This is the board's decision, and we all stand by it. I think I'm proud of the continuity that we've had in the board and the ability to make those decisions as tough as they can be, and then just to stick by them. And whatever that decision be, and if you didn't agree with it, but you weren't in the majority that time, that's democracy.
And you know what, Rob, sometimes those decisions, when they're looking at us from across the room or across the camera, look like they're easy to just say yes, no, but there's so much and a lot of these decisions that go behind that yes or behind that no. And like Rob said, it might not always come easy, but in the end, I think we're a good team working together.
Absolutely.
I guess we're not done with homework.
No,
No.
absolutely you're not. And I think that's the one thing that the board here does. You do your homework, you read, you research, you ask great questions, and you listen to what the community is saying. Well, I thank you for your leadership and
Thank
your
you.
dedication to our students.
Happy to be here.
It's a pleasure working with you and serving the students of our community as well as the families that support us every day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we've had a great first segment here on our show. Please stay tuned, because in our second segment, we're going to hear from 2 more of our Board of Education members, Mr. Matt Salura and Mr. Mark Curtis. Welcome back to Twinsburg Schools Today. We are just so excited to be hosting our Board of Education members for our show here in November. And before I introduce our 2 board member guests, I wanted to say that Mrs. Angela DeFabio, who is also one of our board members, was unable to make it today due to a work commitment, and we're very sorry that she wasn't, and maybe she can join us for another show in the future. But in the meantime, I'm delighted that Mr. Mark Curtis and Mr. Matt Salura are joining us for our show. Welcome.
Thank you.
Glad
Good
to be here.
Appreciate it.
Well, we're excited that you're here too. Mr. Falber and Mrs. Davis were on the show the first segment and shared a little bit of insight into being a Board of Education member. So why don't we start by asking you to give us some insight from your perspective. What does it mean to serve as a member of our Board of Education, and why is that role so important in our community?
Well, I think it's important in the community because we serve as a mechanism for not only speaking on behalf of residents and providing you information with respect to any concerns that are out there, ideas that people may have, and so forth and so on. But for me personally, I take advantage of making sure that we as board members do what we can to educate our constituency. Sometimes there are misconceptions with respect to what we are and are allowed to do or not allowed to do, or what we are responsible for. So I take the initiative to make sure that they're informed, and I provide clarity when necessary. And I think that that's the responsibility of the board, is to make sure that not only that we're transparent in everything that we're doing, but when there's a necessity to clear things up or make sure that people are informed in terms of what things are actually happening, I make sure that we're responsible for doing things like that. So I take a lot of pride and make sure that I'm representing the community well, making sure that I am behaving appropriately as a board member, understanding that I'm an elected official, and that there are things that come along with that territory. So, but all in all, I mean, we're really here to do what's best for children.
Absolutely.
So I think serving the community is important, and giving back to a community that has given myself and my children, my family so much. As a board member, I take an approach to it as looking at things from a 10,000-foot point of view, and ensuring that while we're not involved in the day-to-day operations because we hire a superintendent to deal with that, I really try and focus on setting the district up for success for the future, for the next 4, 5, 10 years. Whether it be financial solvency, whether it be initiatives that will help the children down the road. That's a really important part of the job as a board member, and something that I'm proud to be able to do.
I think so much about the future planning that the Board of Education has to have in mind. And for the past several years, the Board of Education has directed that we would be engaging members of our community in this planning, this large project called the Strategic Plan. And it's started with focus groups 3 years ago. And last year was the year of engagement with the action teams. And we will soon be talking about the strategic plan. Can you just give an overview of that process and tell our residents why the process has taken so long and why it's important to our community?
Well, I think it's important that we as a board are deliberate in what we're doing with respect to planning. You've often heard us talk about the fact that all of our decisions are data-driven. Well, soliciting feedback is a form of data, and you have to do it in such a way to where you're able to assess and discuss and put plans in place, and that takes time. And so where we are right now and the level of engagement that we've just completed, a year's worth of work to kind of come to the point of where we are now, it takes time to distill all of that information, to break it down in such a way to where you guys can present it to us as a board for our consideration and adopting it. So, I think that, people may, have issues with respect to how long it takes, but I would much rather be thoughtful in our approach to developing a plan than to have to go back and do something because we weren't responsible enough or we weren't doing things in a thoughtful manner, and perhaps we have to make some revisions. So I think we're trying to do everything as much as possible the right way, and that includes consulting other districts. I know you've had conversations with other superintendents. We have conversations with other board members in other districts and things like that, so that we can make sure that we're not reinventing the wheel. But not only that, we're doing things for purposes of Twinsburg. Like, this is specific to our district,
Right.
and it has to meet our needs. So, I think that that's one of the most important pieces in terms when you talk about how long the process has taken.
And the process included goals and action steps.
And it's important too, when we're talking, as a board, we're elected to represent the community and represent the people. And while we make decisions, every day in regards to, recommendations for hiring and things like that, and, fees and different, policies. When you're talking a strategic action plan, you're talking about something that's going to set the road and set the course for the next 5 years. It's important that we involve the community in it. And it was, when the directive was given, it was clearly stated that this was going to be a community supported, that we wanted the input of the community. We didn't want the 5 of us in the administration to work on this strategic plan and then put it out to the community. So that's why, it was important, to engage these people. And in doing so, it takes quite a while. It takes a while to set up, and how are we going to engage? The planning to, to set the process and the stage for how this is going to roll out. And so, in doing that, I'm comfortable in the fact that we've reached out, we've made it available, and given everybody the opportunity to come forward with their voice, so that we've got the gauge of the community, and we're setting ourselves up for something that the community will be in support of and buy in, as we grow.
And one of the things that you mentioned was it's future planning. It's talking about setting the course for the school district. A huge initiative currently underway is this conceptual legacy project, and that came out of the work of some of the action teams. And not only that, but our Board of Education and Boards of Education, before the 5 board members sitting before the community today, really have thought hard and long about making sure that our facilities are great for kids. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about this conceptual legacy project, what it means, and why we want to engage the community on the front end in making some of those decisions?
Well, it was important, years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, I think, it was important, I remember, coming forward and saying, and the board agreeing, my colleagues agreeing, that, we wanted to set the course so that while we weren't necessarily breaking ground tomorrow, we had a plan, and we've dealt with our facilities for years and kept our kids warm, safe, and dry. We've had some plans, but things change, and we really wanted to come forward and be able to present to the community a date of, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is now. This is when we're addressing it. So, that would be made clear. But again, in doing that and using our facilities assessment, and then we had an updated assessment, to our buildings, because we had already addressed some of those needs, those high priority needs. Getting out and engaging the community and presenting them with everything. And that's the big thing, and that's what's important to understand is, what the district, what the board is out presenting is the entire gamut. And we're understanding that the potential for every single project listed on there is probably not going to happen, but it's important that we be open and transparent and honest as to everything that we would be able to do, and then understand what the community wants and what the community will support. So again, we set the district up for success, that we're not coming out and trying to initiate a project that doesn't have the community support.
So transparency is really important.
Right, absolutely. And one of the things that I'll add to that is that, I talk a lot about 21st century learning and what that environment looks like. And currently, a high school is 20 years old. I mean, that's our newest building. So to put some things in perspective, that's the most technologically ready building that we have is the high school. And we still work on things to make sure that that is where it is now. So if you think about that being the newest building and you think about all of our other buildings, there are some things that are not conducive to delivering a 21st century education. Let's just look at building capacity, but let's look at classroom sizes. They're not big enough. So we've purchased functional furniture and things like that so that they're able to use technology in such a way to where we're to integrate that into how we're providing instruction to kids. But for purposes of really going where we need to go, the buildings need to be conducive for that. So from a learning perspective, that's one of the reasons why it's necessary to have a project like this. The other piece has to do with the people that work in those buildings, right? So if teachers are going to be delivering this instruction, they have to be in an environment that's conducive to doing that and giving our kids 21st century learning opportunities. So we spend a lot of time talking about that. I know that you do as well, and that's kind of in the title. That's within the strategic plan, and that's very deliberate because we want people to understand what that is, what it means, and what it looks like. And obviously there are costs involved with that. So there are varying levels of varying degrees of what we can do. And then there are things that we absolutely need. And so now that we've kind of put together this very comprehensive plan that we want people to look at, I think that they're put in a position to where they can make some informed decisions and tell us what they want.
Right. So we get it right on the first time, you know?
Absolutely. That's
So
the goal.
I think that as a Board of Education, you work so well together, and decisions that you make keep the students front and center. And I remember just 2 years ago, it was May, and our 8th graders were supposed to be going to Washington, D.C. And unfortunately, we had the Discovery Tour incident happen, not only to our school district, to many. Matt, you were board president at that time, and you were very deliberate and pretty specific about the fact that that situation with Discovery Tours was not going to impact the students of R.B. Chamberlain Middle School. That's the kind of Board of Education that we have, right? Keeping the kids front and center. Do you have any comments you want to add about that?
Well, I think it was important, you know, everything that we do, we try to have a direct impact on the classroom. And that was one situation where, you know, the decision had to be made. And it was, you know, we're not going to impact the kids negatively. So we're going to send them on this trip, and we're going to worry about dealing with the lawsuit, the legal issues of it at a later time. And, you know, it was very fortunate, you know, that you know, you talk about continuity as a board and how we collaborate together. You know, we were all on the same page. There was not a,
Right.
I remember, you know, making those calls to my colleagues and saying, listen, this is an issue that we have to deal with. And there was not a hesitation amongst any single colleague that, you know, because it's important. The kids come first. You know, that's what we're here for. I mean, ultimately, you know, we serve the residents, but we're here for these kids. And that's the most important thing. And I think front and center of my mind, my colleagues' minds every time that we make a decision.
Well,
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it was a no-brainer, but we also had to put you guys in a position as an administration to execute all of the things that needed to be done behind the scenes so that they could go to Washington, D.C. And it took a lot of work. We furnished you with the resources, but all of the other work that went on behind the scenes to make it happen was really something that I'm especially proud of. Because it takes an administration, it takes people with the ability to execute what we've authorized you guys to do. And I think that's one of the things that I'm most proud of. And so the kids weren't impacted. There wasn't any delay in anything, and we were able to get it done.
well, I'm just so proud to work together with you and support the students and the families of our school district. I thank you for your leadership, and I thank you for all that you do every single day for the students of the Twinsburg City School District.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Well, thank you for being with us on our show today. It is November, so we're very grateful to you, our residents, for supporting our students, and we thank you for all that you do every day for the boys and girls of the Twinsburg City School District. Have a great day, everyone.